we have world-class athletes. It's just like this up here.
20 million is not much.
Next one, whoa, so quick.
Needs to stop tai chiing and step up.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Hazwin Hassan here with
Hananas Harun.
Now, earlier this week, leading US electric car maker Tesla made headlines for pulling out of its plans to expand operations in the region. Now, this includes Malaysia. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, in response to the news, says Tesla is struggling to compete with Chinese EV manufacturers in Southeast Asia that have offered more affordable models and have grown in popularity here.
Yes, this comes after China's BYD reported a 21% jump in second quarter sales this year. Tesla, on the other hand, posted a 6% drop in April to June quarter vehicle deliveries on Tuesday, the first time the US firm posted 2 straight quarters of decline.
So today we'll look at just how much this all plays into the growing local EV market here and how the future looks for investment opportunities in the auto industry. And in the second half of the show, we'll look back on the just concluded Paris Olympics and recap our nation's performance. For this, we have our very own sports editor, Ajitpal Singh, joining us. Ajitpal, welcome back to the show.
Okay. Thank you to be
Nice to have you back.
Yes.
So what do you make of our team's performance there in Paris?
I mean, the target was to win a gold, and we did not. Who should we blame for the failure? But again, I mean, to qualify for the Olympics is a huge thing. You know, not everyone gets to compete in the Olympics.
True, yeah.
To win a gold, probably we just have to overcome that mental block. I mean, for us all to earn our first million ringgit, it's very tough. But after that, it just, you can make more money. So it's the same. I think we just need to win our first Olympic gold. Then after that, I think we'll win more.
First step, always the hardest.
Yeah.
Well, more on the Olympics a little bit later on. First up, Hannah, Tesla and all things electric vehicles.
Yes, we have in the studio with us today the head of the Malaysian Electric Vehicle Owners Club, Datuk Shahrol, Azral, Ibrahim, Halmi, to help give us a clearer picture of the local EV scene. Datuk, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you, happy to be here.
Okay, let's just start with the consumer attitudes. How receptive are Malaysian consumers to EVs? Apart from prices, are there particular concerns or misconceptions that are holding back adoption?
Well, the Malaysian consumer is particularly, I think, price sensitive when it comes to cars. I think there was a Khazanah household study that says that a very high proportion of the household income is spent on transportation. So when it's that much being spent, people are very keen on bargains. Right. And so the Malaysian public interest in EVs really spiked up in 2022 when the government started giving what I call tax holiday, essentially the excise and import tax exemptions for all imported and CKD EVs. That brought prices down considerably, and we saw that from the statistics where in 2021 only 256 EVs were registered in Malaysia, and it jumped 12-fold in 2022. That's right, to 3,127 if I'm not mistaken. And so the interest is there. The technology itself is fairly new. So a lot of people are not familiar, and they come from a very familiar scene of, you fill up with petrol, you go to a corner petrol station, 5 minutes and you're done. Right. You travel outstation and there are petrol stations everywhere, so you don't need to worry about where to plug in. Yeah. And so that's the sort of education that I think that we need to do more. And MYEVOC, the Malaysia EV Owners Club, we formed it in 2019 to help address this, to make users' lives easier, to also push for not only the government, but also private sector to start building these charging stations, because without these charging stations, everybody's going to say, where do I charge?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's a chicken and egg thing. So we believe that the growth of charging infrastructure has to be in tandem with EV growth.
Okay. I think there's also a worry about the safety of the batteries in the car. I mean, I've heard some friends say, like, they're worried with the hot weather and whether the batteries could last.
Yep.
What do you think
That's
about that?
that's actually something that we saw very early on, where the line goes something like, oh, Malaysia's hot climate,
Yeah.
right? And then the comeback is always that, wow, Malaysia as hot as we are, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, gets hotter, 50, 60 degrees even in the last summer. The Americans, the southwestern states get even hotter. So our heat is not so much the problem. Most manufacturers would test in climates that are even more severe than ours.
Okay.
So the issue will happen though is that because it's hot, our aircons will run more and your battery runs down faster. And so we see that sometimes, bila summer in Malaysia, when the rainy season ends and the hot season starts, people start complaining, hey, something wrong with my battery lah. Suddenly my range drop. And so we have to explain that, yes, the aircon takes up energy, and because you compare, a liter of petrol contains about 9 kilowatt hours of energy. Now, if you assume there's a 50-liter tank, which is actually kind of small these days, that's about 400 kilowatt hours. Now, the average EV car battery is only about 50 to 60 kilowatt hours. So it's about, I don't know, a tenth or maybe slightly more. So when you have such a small tank and you use up same amount of energy, you will notice it more in a battery EV. That's why when people drive petrol pun, they do consume a lot of energy, but a lot of energy, that energy is wasted. So they don't really notice it. And plus our petrol is subsidized.
Now, speaking of batteries, in terms of the competition that Tesla is facing, actually Tesla gets its batteries from the Chinese car maker, from BYD.
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, to me, that kind of says something about Tesla if they're depending on the Chinese car maker, on the Chinese to make batteries for them.
They don't depend solely, because what happened was that when Tesla's growth went really gangbusters starting 2018, 19 and 20, their battery factory capacity was constrained. They have a huge battery factory in California near Fremont, run by Panasonic, and then they opened up another one in Nevada. They call it Giga Nevada, also run by Panasonic. Panasonic is a long-time partner. And then they partnered with LG Chem to produce batteries for them, which is a South Korean company. So what happens is when they grew so rapidly, they had to source batteries from elsewhere. So what happens now is that the cars that are made in the USA, in Austin and in Fremont, uses batteries that are made in the USA. Those are Panasonic and LG Chem batteries. The ones that are produced in Germany uses batteries that are sourced from CATL, as well as Panasonic and LG Chem batteries. Now, the ones in Shanghai, the Teslas that are imported over here, uses batteries from CATL and LG Chem and Panasonic as well. And I think BYD blade also is used for Model Ys that are made in Germany. Now, an interesting fact about that is that the same blade batteries that goes into BYD cars that are used in Model Ys perform better in Model Ys.
Oh.
In terms of charging capability, and this has been tested. So the users are all like, aku nak beli Model Y with the BYD batteries because those have been proven to be the highest performing ones. So it's an interesting feature where Tesla, because they had started back in 2011, 2012 with their Roadster and then the Model S and so on, they are way ahead of everybody. And I mean everybody, including the Chinese automakers in terms of software.
Okay.
Software, the battery management system. So, for example, we see even the Seal, which is the latest and greatest BYD consumer car, has some funny characteristics when you are fast charging it. And this one goes deep into the nerdy level. But basically, it's saying that in a Tesla, when you use the same batteries, when you plug into fast charge, it will generate a lot of heat. In a Tesla, the software knows as soon as you plug in, it starts cooling, even though the battery is not really that hot yet. So to counter the heat that is going to be generated. Whereas the BYD Seal, you plug in, they tunggu, hit 50 degrees, and then they kick in the thing. By that time, the battery has already started to overheat, and therefore they had to throttle down the charging curve, the charging
Right.
power. So this is what I mean by the software and the sophistication of the sensors, of the logic. So Tesla is way ahead of the game in software and battery management systems.
But despite all of those advantages and sophistication, I mean, the fact of the matter is BYD and Chinese EV manufacturers in general are doing so much better now. I mean, in terms of sales and popularity, it's growing more and more
Yep.
by the day. And just from this very sort of layman point of view and very superficial perspective is that I think the most obvious reason why it's doing better is because, number one, they're more affordable.
Yep.
And two, some might argue, in fact, I would say many would argue that the Chinese cars are more appealing. Design-wise, they look better. What do you have to say about that?
The Teslas, they have only just updated one of the most popular models, the Model 3, early this year. And the Model Y has grown really long in the tooth, even though it's the best-selling EV in the world in 2023. And it continues to be one of the best-selling EVs. It's getting kind of old in terms of the looks, even though Tesla insists that the under-the-skin improvements are there. And I agree. For example, the Model Y sold this year has double glazed windows, has better sensors capability, but they look the same, right? For consumers, they say, okay, this one looks old, this one looks new, I'd rather get the new one. That's one factor, is the age of the product itself. But in Malaysia specifically, I think that Malaysian car buyers are a little bit manja, in the sense of you go to a dealer, the salesperson will take care of everything, plate number interchange, insurance, loan, everything is taken care of. Whereas Tesla, you have to do it all yourself.
Right.
And there are more than a few people whom we have interacted with online who says, hey, this one, very leceh lah. Sometimes also the sales advisor, very hard to get a hold of. And then you have to do everything yourself. My wife, when she bought her Model Y, wow, we have to do the running around to Puspakom ourselves. We have to do the running around to JPJ ourselves, And so this is not an experience where people, hey, shoot, I am paying 180K for this. Why am I running around like headless chicken? And then this thing is also like our processes, our JPJ process, our insurance process, our Puspakom process. It is not the most user-friendly lah. Let's admit that.
Okay, so we've talked about the difference in prices. Is there also different consumer groups between Tesla and BYD? Like, can you identify, or is there a distinction between a Chinese EV owner and a Tesla owner?
Not so much now, because it's still kind of early in the adoption stage. We have around 30,000 EVs only registered. I mean, you've counted that with how many millions of regular cars, right? And so in general, what we see is that the people who are interested in EVs in general, they would go look at BYDs, they would go look at Tesla, and then the personal preferences come in. They go look at Tesla, alamak, no buttons, only one screen,
Right.
and no front speedometer, and then they immediately get turned off by that. But some, wow, this is futuristic. This is IKEA style, so they love it. But some people hate it. But then they go to the BYD, see, oh, this feels like a Merc. It's very comfortable. It has nice leather. It feels like a normal car. So the driving experience is not too far from what they are used to, and some people gravitate towards that, right? Whereas the Tesla guys would be like, hey, this one feels too normal.
Okay.
Yeah, they want a different experience. They want the instant acceleration. They want the regenerative braking and so on. So coming back to your earlier question, there's specific groups. No, I think most of the time people like the EVs. They complain lah, oh, BYD charging a bit slow compared to Tesla. And then they complain, Tesla, I cannot get a hold of anybody when I'm buying the car. So everything is via the app.
Okay.
So no human interaction. So it's a personal preference thing.
What about performance-wise now? Of the little I know about electric cars, I do know that they are very fast, as in 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, much faster than your average, petrol powered car. So between the two, Chinese cars and Tesla, which one fares better?
Again, it's more or less the same. The seal performance claims at 3.8 seconds, 0 to 100. the Model Y. The Model 3 performance is slightly under that. I think 3.1 or 2.9 seconds, which is crazy, like super bike territory already. I mean, if you experience it, I promise you, by the second time the driver pijak 3.1 seconds, your neck will hurt already. So this is something more to show off rather than to use regularly. I think the main attraction of an EV is the fact that it's instant. You press and you go, which I find and a lot of drivers find very, very nice in a traffic jam, in KL traffic jam, because it's less stressful. You just tekan and then the thing will go. So coming back to that, performance-wise, yes, more or less the same, although what we have observed also is that the Chinese EVs, they tend to tune towards comfort.
Okay.
So whereas, for example, the Tesla, you hit the accelerator and the thing responds instantly. The seal, for example, you hit and then there's a slight delay before the thing goes, and it's the power builds up more gradually.
Would you say in general that electric car drivers, that's the thrill for them? Did they seek that thrill of power and speed?
Well, not all electric cars are as powerful. For example, you have the lower end like Neta V, the MG4, the BYD Dolphin. They are more suited for range rather than acceleration. But having said that, they are still much quicker than the comparable petrol car. But again, it's again enough variances in people's personal preferences that they try it once, wow, shock, and then after that they just drive sedately. I drive sedately these days. I have a Tesla.
Okay, on range, in terms of EV infrastructure, are there already a lot of charging stations in Malaysia?
There are a total about 2,600 charging stations, which includes about 600 rapid ones, and the rest are AC, which is the slower ones that you use when you're at shopping malls, when you have a few hours to burn. So the issue here today is that the concentration, or rather the geographic distribution. Along the North-South Highway, we have, if I'm not mistaken, 94 charging bays where you can use simultaneously. So imagine lah, Malaysia sekarang 30,000 EVs, 94 can charge at the same time along the highways at 44 locations.
Right.
There is a charging desert heading towards the east in Peninsular Malaysia. And of course, you don't talk about Borneo lah. Borneo, there's like clusters of DC in Kuching, Miri, and then KK. That's it.
Okay.
So definitely a lot of work to be done to improve coverage. Now, having said that, Klang Valley wise and Penang, okay, because the distances are relatively short, and there are many options already.
It looks like the environment here, the infrastructure, is trying to encourage more people to get into driving electric cars.
Yep.
Right? And are we going to see the sort of incentives that say that the Chinese government is giving the people here in Malaysia?
Well, I think the public, actually the users, were quite surprised at the generosity of the 2022. It will go on 2022 through 25 for completely built up EVs, fully imported EVs, and for knockdown or locally assembled EVs, it goes up to N27. So that's actually quite generous. We were quite surprised that it's 100% total exemption, which is why you see that 12-fold increase in purchases. So if anything, the users would like to see more support towards charging infrastructure, because right now charging infrastructure has very little, if any, incentives to the infrastructure builder. Now for the users, we do get that 2,500 ringgit a year tax exemption, tax rebate ke exemption, I'm not sure. I think exemption. You're not taxed on that for installing your own charging box at home, and also for membership or subscription for the charging point operators. But the charging point operators, nothing. In other countries, actually, they do get a lot of support from the government, either for their capital expenditure or from operational expenditure in terms of cheaper tariffs. Thailand gives cheaper tariffs for charging point operators to make the charging outside more affordable. Because right now in Malaysia, when people ask, kalau isi petrol lagi murah ke ataupun EV? The answer is it varies. If you charge at home, you can be up to 30 to 50% cheaper because our electricity rates at home are relatively inexpensive, and also we are tiered. So if you don't use a lot, you know, you get 30 cent, 40 cent kilowatt hour. And if you have solar, lagi best. Like people who have solar boasted, oh lah, zero.
But I'd imagine that someone who drives an electric car would obviously use more electric, right?
Yes, they would. But kalau you compare with the cost of petrol, on average, we see 20 to 30% if they have a mix of public and private charging. Tapi if they charge public only, then the cost goes up. So it is more expensive. So you get people who, some of our members like to share lah. I mean, they drive from, let's say, from KL to Penang, and they say, oh, I paid X ringgit at this charging station. And then of course all the anti-EV guys come in and go, oi, isi petrol lagi murah. Because the charging rates has to compensate and provide a return to the charging point operators, and these things aren't cheap. So you know, you install benda hardware tu is not cheap. The cost to install also, you need to dig holes for the cable, you need to connect the cable to TNB and all that. So they have to make their return somehow, and that results in a cost that is higher than petrol. So we would like to see government support on that particular aspect, like what other countries are doing.
Apart from saving and, well, the incentives that are clearly there or on its way here in Malaysia, do you think that the pivot was that people are becoming more environmentally conscious? Because, you know, as in China, the demand grew, not coincidentally, but, you know, China is known for being the biggest emitter of you know, pollution and contributing to greenhouse gases. So do you think that moving on, you're going to get more people who are going to hop on that bandwagon?
It's going to be a mix of reasons. I think even online we see the discussions in the forums, at least at this point in time, people are less looking at value for money. And you get like a car that can sprint 0 to 100 in 3 seconds, you know, at a price that is a quarter of a supercar with supercar performance. So there are some people who look at that. There are some people who look at, oh yes, I think it's time for me to move on. Because I want to be more green, more environmentally friendly. But that's currently minority in Malaysia. We are still driven a lot by prices.
Or is it just cool to drive electric cars now, do you think?
Nowadays, not so much, because there's so many on the road already. You're not unique.
What about you, Ajitpal? I don't want to leave you out of the discussion.
Yeah.
What do you think about electric cars? Do you drive one, or?
No, I don't. I have not tried. Basically, I don't know whether it's better to drive an EV car, you know, because we've been driving
Petrol.
the normal cars for a long time. So I'm not sure whether I should. Because there is a concern also whether in Malaysia we have that EV stations around enough, whether it's enough, and then whether it would be enough to drive from, you know, the trunk roads, whether they have EV stations around. So that's a good question.
Perhaps maybe Datuk, you can convert Ajitpal.
Jom test drive after this. So usually the first test drive, what gets people, the first thing they go, wow, so quiet. Next one, whoa, so quick. And then they start looking, this one apa. That's usually when you hook them.
Interesting.
Okay, so let's talk about the whole issue with Tesla wanting to pull out from Southeast Asia. When the news broke, our International Trade and Industry Ministry downplayed it and said that Tesla had never planned on starting a factory in Malaysia. What do you make of this issue?
Well, that's an industrial policy question. So it's a bit like I have to wear the hat of like a normal citizen and not an EV user. But yes, as far as I understand, when Tesla negotiated the Global EV Leaders Program, the one that's offered by MITI to be able to sell their cars here directly without having to go through a dealer network, there was never any promise to open a factory here. And at that time also, I think they were wooing or talking to people from Indonesia, people from India, Indian states as a matter of fact, and Thailand. And they got farther along, I think, with the discussions in India, because I understand like a few years ago they even opened orders for the Model 3 over there, and so people paid deposit already, but the thing is not forthcoming. So that's a bit of an issue. But I think the global economy or the global EV market also has something to play with that in terms of Tesla's decision to sort of pull back. Because we can see over the past year or so, the EV market globally is becoming increasingly dominated by Chinese manufacturers. It's well known that the Chinese manufacturers have received a ton of government support, which enables them to have the enormous scale, and that results in being able to sell their products for, not to say cheap, but at a more competitive price than even Tesla could. I mean, Tesla knew this. They opened a Shanghai factory to take advantage of that. But still, I think in terms of scale, in terms of what we covered earlier, product freshness, they are losing ground, and therefore I think they are pulling back. And Elon Musk specifically has said that they want to focus more on self-driving, the robo-taxi, and they want to focus more on AI.
On Elon Musk, I think he's changed his tune a little bit, hasn't he, over the years? Because, he went from, in 2011, he told, I think it was a Bloomberg news anchor, was saying, have you seen their cars, the Chinese cars? I don't see them at all as a competitor. I don't think they have a great product. A few years down the road, earlier this year, he said, our observation is generally that the Chinese car companies are the most competitive car companies in the world. Yep. I think they have a significant success. They will have a significant success outside of China. He's eaten some humble pie, hasn't he?
Well, I think things change. I think the information that was available, even BYD products in 2021 were not nearly as good as the products they have today, and that's the result of such intense market competition in China. I think we don't appreciate the fact that there are literally hundreds of EV only car companies in China over the past 5 or 6 years, and they are super duper competitive. A lot of innovations have come up from Chinese car companies. One interesting fact that is not well known outside of the industry was that, the traditional Tesla battery chemistry is lithium ion, which uses like those nasty nickel, cobalt metals and all that, but has a higher energy density and is used for long range and high performance vehicles. Now, there's a different type of chemistry called lithium ion, lithium iron, LFP, lithium ferrous phosphorus iron, that is heavier, less energy dense, but safer and cheaper to manufacture. Now, the funny thing was that the scientist that came up with this LFP chemistry is actually an American. About 10, 15 years ago, sold the patent to a Chinese company because low energy density, and so on and so forth. The Chinese companies have the patent, and it only expired in 22 or 23, the patent. And they have spent so much time and effort developing this. Now it's becoming the battery chemistry that everybody's aspiring for. And this is something that I think resulted in huge government support for R&D, but most of all, that intense market competition over there. They have to come up with something better and cheaper and safer.
And speaking of investment, I think number one, that battery maker made a great decision. I think his decision to sell off his patent to the Chinese paid off really well. So in terms of more future investment, the American multi-billionaire Warren Buffett is actually one of the biggest investors with BYD, right? And he's banking on BYD to do way better, and he is looking to see BYD be the world's leader by 2035. So this just gives you the picture just how confident even American investors are in Chinese electric cars. How would you make of that?
It's just that depth of market that the Chinese have in terms of EVs. They didn't have a legacy automotive industry to hold them back. I think we can see symptoms of this, especially in the US, some of it in Europe, where the existing legacy automakers, most of the time they argue, why go so fast? We still have all this assets and factories that are geared towards petrol and diesel combustion cars. Let's try and make them more efficient. Try this, try that, try that. It's the classic resistance to change and protecting what you have rather than going for something new. So they represented, the automakers, legacy automakers represented a very strong and loud voice that waters down some of the government policies in moving towards EVs. China didn't have that.
Right.
China, the government made a strategic decision saying that, look, if we try and compete with petrol or diesel engine cars, and which we need because our country is huge, we have a rising middle class, everybody wants to drive cars, we will lose.
Right.
But if we go towards this new technology and invest the hell out of it, battery, powertrain, software, we will not only reduce our pollution, but become technology leaders and address our problems inside the country. And this is the result. You can see the products that come out. Of course, there are failed Chinese EV companies as well. There are failed Chinese battery companies as well. But that's the nature of the market, competition.
Right. So now lastly, before we wrap up, because I was just told that we have only a few minutes left, with Tesla backing out of its expansion plans, obviously that was a decision, a business decision.
Yep.
So does that actually open the way for, say, more Chinese car makers to come in and invest here? Is that going to open more doors for other car manufacturers?
I think the balance, though, that Malaysia has to strike is this old versus new. We have existing investments in, again, petrol and diesel combustion assembly plants. We have new players coming in. There was a factory that was launched just a few days ago in Negeri Sembilan near Rembau,
right,
that would assemble the Neta and the Dongfeng EVs. So there's this balance of old versus new, but also I think we need to take a step back a little bit and figure out, like, especially for urban areas, congestion. I mean, do we have too many cars on the road already? So we need to figure out that balance, the number of cars on the road. We also need to figure out the balance between petrol subsidies. And so it is a very complicated question covering many, many ministries, which is why I think the government made a very strategic decision to have the Energy Transition Ministry be headed by a deputy prime minister. Right? So that then all the different ministries that look after the environment, look after finance, look after that, so they actually have to come together and work together, because this is a multifaceted thing. So investment in industry, what industry? Clean industry, EV assembly, are we adding value to that, or are we just putting nuts and bolts together?
Right.
What about software? Software is a very important low entry barrier industry that Malaysians are particularly good at. Why don't we spend more time looking after user experience, charging, navigating, finding chargers, and so on and so forth? So these are all excellent opportunities that must be discovered.
All right. Thank you so much, Datuk, for your
You're
time.
welcome.
I hope you can stay on for our second segment on the Olympics
Yes.
in just a bit. So
Cerita sikit.
yes,
Macam mana
Ajitpal,
nak menang emas.
we've got a lot to share with us in a bit, but we'll be right back after this to look back on Malaysia's performance at the Olympics. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, following what can be described as a poor outing at the Paris Olympic Games, Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeoh has come under fire for failing to deliver on the Road to Gold, or RTG, targets set. RTG is a multi-million ringgit program that was launched last year. It has given Malaysia's top athletes the additional support they need to achieve that long-awaited breakthrough, winning Malaysia's first Olympic gold. This year alone, the government has spent 20 million ringgit on the program.
Hannah Yeoh has acknowledged the criticism and disappointment from the public, but she maintains, however, that the RTG remains on course for future long-term investment in the nation's sports development and has not yet failed, is what people have said it has. So, Ajitpal, where do we begin on this? What's your take on all the backlash that Hannah is receiving, and what do you think of her response so far, standing by the athletes?
I mean, it's good to stand by the athletes. I mean, to be the cheerleader of athletes, to build that sense of togetherness, support, and all these things. But as a sportsman, she should not forget her other responsibilities, to fix things, to make sure that money is not wasted. There's enough infrastructure, and in terms of management, it should be properly, it should be more streamlined and all that. And talking about budget, 20 million for an entire program is not much. I think the British cycling team gets more to prepare their team. So 20 million is not much. But of course, RTG has hired a few guys to bring in sponsorship, like the guy Datuk Stuart Ramalingam, to bring in more sponsorship. So they are trying to get the private sector to invest into the RTG program.
Right.
Fixing things, what should we fix? I mean, in Paris, we only had about 3-4 athletes who were good enough to contend for medals. The rest were there just to collect all Olympic pins. For instance, Azim Fahmi, the sprinter. I mean, he's the national record holder. He did 10.09 in Colombia about 2-3 years ago, but in Paris he did 10.42, which I think the Sukma Games record is 10.18. So I mean, if you go to the Olympic Games, you should, at least do better time, improve your performance and all that. Not do 10.42 in the 100 meters. It's only about 0.07 seconds ahead of the women's world record.
Right. Okay.
So it's quite embarrassing also.
Is it?
And why we didn't win a goal? I mean, I think it's just the mental block. We just need to win the first goal. I mean, in the closest we came to winning goal, of course we have many silver medalists. I mean, throughout the years. The closest we came was at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Chong Wei against Lindan in the final. He was just 2 points away from winning the gold medal, but Lindan caught up and won. And even closer was this men's doubles pair, Go Wisham and Tan Wee Kiong. They had 2 match points opportunities in the third game, the deciding game, yet they failed to close the match and win the gold medal. So probably it's more psychological, mental, which RTG should look into. I mean, our athletes, like, we don't talk about the pro athletes, like Aaron Chia, So Week. They have the skill, they have everything. It's just that, they don't know how to react, when they are in the situation where where it is the crucial stage of the Olympics, when they are in the final, or they don't know how to do things. But credit to Aaron and Wick, who, for winning bronze again. I mean, it's not easy to win medals in the Olympics. Lee Zijia, he should have been in the final. I mean, he did very well. I mean, in all his matches, except for the semi-final. He just had a bad day, or the Thai guy. The Thai guy is actually as Kun Lawud. He's not an average player. He's a world champion. He's a reigning world champion. Just that after winning the world title last year in Denmark, he took a break, to relax, and then he came back, and then, he reached the final again. Just that maybe Zijia was not prepared to face him, how to tackle his tactics and all these things. So there were many close calls that, that we could have overcome. And also Azizol, this qualification.
Yeah.
Many don't want to touch on this topic, whether it was a waste of money, because cycling is not a cheap sport.
How much was his bicycle, by the way? A lot of people were commenting
I
on
know
that.
It's a few $1 million to
One bicycle on one bike.
to develop the bicycle. They have paid so much money.
Wow.
Right.
But it's not only for him; it's for Shah Firdaus and women cyclists as well.
Right.
I mean, he's a former world champion, a 2-time Olympic medalist. I don't know what happened in the heat. Whether probably he was too eager to win Malaysia's first goal.
Right.
Maybe we can't say whether the ruling is unfair or what, because the rules are there. It's enforced, and it's been it's under the world body. That means you have to follow these rules. You can't pass the pacer before it leaves the track. So what to do?
But there was talk about how before the rules were slightly different. That if
they changed the rules.
Right, and Datuk Aziz Hasni apparently wasn't aware of the new rule or the change.
Which he should have been aware.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think he was aware. He apologized. He admitted that he made a mistake. He made a mistake, lah. So, what to do? He's 36 years old. He was our best bet to win the gold medal, and he wants to continue. I think, if not to say he wants to continue. People want him to continue. He's 36. I don't know. At 40, he can still
Perform.
Probably he should look at the Nagoya Asian Games, which is 2 years from now,
Right.
and he should gauge his performance, whether he can still try for another Olympics. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately for Datuk Azizul Hasni, or Pocket Rocketman as he's more popularly known, he was eliminated. He was disqualified in the heats, right? But for Shafir Dasharam, he was almost there. I mean, it was just a matter of few seconds before he could potentially get a podium finish. But everything just.
But it is normal in Kirin. Crashes happen all the time. So he could have won the bronze or maybe the silver. It's just a huge heartbreak, lah. Heartache for us that the Japanese rider crashed into him, and then he crashed into the British rider as well, and the Australian who was at the back won the bronze.
Right, but he was also relegated to 6th place
because he was blamed for that.
And yet
crash.
He's come out saying that it wasn't his fault.
Yeah. So
what do you make of that?
I mean, we cannot. I know the technicalities of this. It's tough for us to explain, and probably there are rules that, Yeah. So, but even like RTG, Shah Firdaus was wearing that same custom-made carbon shoes for so many years, and it was worn out. And because of RTG, when he went to RTG, look here, Shah needs a new shoes. They gave him 2 pairs. So they work very fast. So there are some good things that RTG has done. But only thing I think they should look at the mental thing, mental strength. Yeah.
Sorely lacking, right?
Yeah, sorely lacking. Yeah. And Hana, you should look into schools as well. How do we improve sports in schools?
Right.
Because I don't think sports is prioritized in schools. I think the sports school system has killed sports in other schools. I mean, now each state they have 2-3 sports schools. Like say like you are from this school, and there's an athlete who is good, and he wins some medals in the MSSM event, and he is absorbed into the sports school. So that means this school is thinking, why should I develop an athlete? Waste my funds, and then he goes there. And this guy will represent that school and participate in a district competition where he will outpace everyone and win. So these things are happening, and you should not even look at government schools now, because many students are homeschooled. They are in private school and in international schools. So how do you tap these talents?
So Ajitpal, what about former Youth and Sports Minister Khairi Jamaluddin's comments on his podcast Keluar Sekejap just a few days ago? He said the current minister, Hannah, needs to stop tai chiing and step up over the abysmal Olympic performance.
Sports, the government cannot interfere with affairs in sports associations and all that. That means they cannot pick, who should run for presidents and all that, because world bodies do not allow this.
Okay.
Right.
And a few national associations, not here but in other, have been suspended because of this. So she cannot really interfere in other people's affairs and association affairs. Just advise boleh.
But that's the thing that KJ said. While she cannot interfere, she is still the minister, and he said there are ways.
Of course there are ways lah, but whether she wants to muscle in and impose all these things lah,
Still on the minister, Hannah says that people are free. Of course, everyone was very quick to pass off their judgments, and make their comments on social media. So people are free to express their opinions. She said that, right? But for her, and I quote her, that she said that for those of us who are at the elite level, the most important opinions come from technical directors and coaches like the badminton coach, Rexy, the track cycling coach, John Beasley, because they know the best. And she added that the RTG stakeholders are indeed the coaches and athletes. And additionally, I quote her saying, if the coaches and athletes say that without RTG, they wouldn't have achieved this level of performance, then we have to accept that. That's the reality. They are the ones who experience all the benefits from RTG firsthand. To me, that seems like a cop-out answer. What do you think?
I think RTG has helped with the athletes' preparation for the Paris Olympics. I think we have a lot of articles and athletes coming out and saying thank you to RTG and all the standard thank yous to the National Sports Councils, the National Sports Institute. It's like they are told to say all these things.
Right.
But in actual fact, I think RTG has helped them a lot in terms of preparations. Like I gave you the example on Shah Firdaus for many, many years, and national elite athlete wearing a worn-out custom-made carbon shoes. And RTG has given him 2 pairs of shoes, just to compete. So there are some good things in, that the RTG has given to athletes, and they are very concerned about athletes' preparation, whether they have good coaching, all these things lah. I mean, we had similar programs during KJ's time also. We had the podium and all that. But at that time, did we win a gold medal at the Olympics?
No.
No, so
best we did was silver, obviously.
Silver, yeah. So I mean, it's the same thing lah. Like I said, I think probably it's our athletes. I mean, a selected few, they have the skill. They are world class. It's just that they need to fix their
right.
That's my personal opinion lah. I mean,
right. Is that the French say, as in, because of the Paris Olympics, the je ne sais quoi that's missing, that little extra thing.
That X factor, you call it?
Yes, X factor, je ne sais quoi, what have you. And so, do you think that moving on, our RTG and whatever programs we have, investing towards developing our athletes, should focus just on that? We have world-class athletes. It's just like this up here.
Of course, on top of it, I mean, they should top up with that lah. But of course, the training facilities, the financing the athletes' preparation should continue, but they should also look into this psychological part. How do they improve? I mean, we have the National Sports Institute, who is in charge of all the sports science in sports. Maybe they should speak to them and see how our athletes could improve.
And lastly, Ajitpal, before we wrap up, if, let's say, the circumstances were a little bit more ideal, right? Let's say they managed to overcome whatever, up here was stopping them from doing that. What events could have possibly delivered us gold?
Badminton.
Definitely.
Even in the next Olympics, it will be
still badminton. Huh?
Badminton. Diving, we used to have world-class athletes. Now it's gone because they removed the coach.
Yeah, that's a pity.
Removed the coach because of some sex scandal in the diving team. So what to do? I mean, they have hired the Malaysian Swimming Association have hired former Olympian Brian Nixon Lomas to relook into our development system, how we tap new divers and all that. So hopefully, but it's a pity because diving, we started focusing on diving in the mid-1990s, and 20 years after that, we won. We produced a world champion in Chong Yu Hong. We won medals in the Olympics. Our last medal we won in Olympics was in 2016. Now we are nowhere near. I mean, everybody is going to airport praising Nur Dabida Sabri for reaching the final, trying our best. But, that should not be the case. I mean, we should not be celebrating it because we have won Olympic medals in diving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, badminton is still the main sport. But, of course, the National Sports Council said that we have to develop athletes for these new sports like skateboarding, sports climbing or rock climbing, surfing, which is good. I mean, Indonesia won a gold medal in sports climbing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
they are traditionally they won only medals in badminton, but at the recent Olympics they won in sports. Maybe we should look into that,
Right. Yeah.
all the sports, and I think the sports, I think they are not expensive sports also. I mean I'm like a layman talking. I mean, surfing, what do you need? Just a board, and then rock climbing, you just need
Right.
skateboarding is just the skateboard and the arena.
It's big, right? Yeah. Datuk, anything that you probably want to share from your...
Well, I think like sports
observation?
development is always a long-term vision. So I think that and we need to be consistent about it, lah. I mean, like what we mentioned earlier, we flashed in the pan for diving, and then suddenly we're nowhere. So the consistency is important. I wonder whether more emphasis should be put on the continuity. So rather than it being driven by specific ministers who are bound to change. These programs are decades-long program usually, especially if you want to take young athletes and groom them into Olympians. So maybe some of the emphasis of decision-making should be re-examined and not be put on a political leader that might change. So that consistency may be one of the keys for us to excel.
I think I can agree with you more on that, definitely, because that consistency
Tukar menteri, tukar strategy.
Yeah.
Tukar menteri,
Lacking.
tukar budget. So it's
That's
difficult
true.
for the actual
And
athletes.
it's not just the ministers, the coaches are changing
Yep.
And
forever.
the sports minister,
Always do.
normally the youth and sports portfolio is a stepping stone
For something else.
So
Yeah.
they always want to
Yeah. Something
to
bigger
shine.
for them
Yeah,
out there.
so-
Yeah, I mean they do their best for the
Yeah.
4 or 5 years, whatever that they're there, but essentially that consistency will not be there lah. When the
maybe
leaders change.
they should look into Australia lah. I mean, their population, I think, is around the same as
Yes.
Malaysia,
Yes.
and recently they were, I think, the 4th or best
Not breakdancing lah.
team
Oh, wow.
team at the Olympics.
How
they
can
were,
we forget that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She and the Turkish shooter, I think,
Yes.
have come out to be the most famous athletes,
It
Olympians
seems her husband was the judge, though.
in Australia.
In Australia.
I sure hope it wasn't at the Olympics he was a judge.
No, Australia. That's how she would speak, because there are videos going around of during that qualifying round.
Right.
And someone was saying her husband was and she holds a PhD in breakdancing.
She has a PhD in breakdancing. So apparently, if you have a PhD in something, it doesn't necessarily mean you can do it. Well, anyways, nice to end on that note. I guess it's back to the drawing board. For our athletes and sports authorities. Well, thank you so much, Ajitpal, for your insights on that. I enjoyed the Olympics actually, but unfortunately, wish that we could have done. We did better. Anyways, thank you again. Thank you, Datuk, for coming on and making time for us on Beyond the Headlines.
pleasure.
Please feel free to come back anytime.
Yeah,
I think
looking forward
there's so
to it.
much more to Tesla
Oh,
and
yes.
EVs to talk about still.
For sure.
Right. Well, that's all the time we have for now for this show this week. I would like to thank again both my guests for coming here today and my co-host Hannah. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Anytime.
And yes, thank you to all of you watching our show here Beyond the Headlines. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, this channel you're watching right now, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to follow us on all the socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X at NSC Online for more news and updates. That's all for now. I'm Hazween Hassan. Until next time, it's goodbye.